The countdown to 2025 is on, and I figured this was a good opportunity to circle back to our 18-year-old official bottling series that we did earlier this year and check off one of the bottles that was probably asked about or requested most during that, and that is the Loch Lomond 18-year-old. Welcome everyone to Whiskey Uncorked. My name is Brian, and first I'd like to thank you all for a fantastic response to last week's Whiskey of the Year video. I don't know where it's going to be by the time I post this video, but it was easily the best video, the most well performing video, at least like in the first day and a half or so from when I'm recording this. Trying to get ahead of my normal schedule for the holidays, and I'm sure many of you are doing that as well. But yeah, thank you so much for the response. All the brand new subs. I hope the content meets your expectations. But yeah, for those of you that have been around for a while, over the spring, you'll remember we did the full exploration of a number of the 18-year-old official bottling line, mostly 46% ABV, mostly non-chill filtered, natural color, that sort of thing. Really to explore that entire category because it's one that I had largely just ignored as I skipped directly to like the independent bottling scene. But I learned my lesson. There's a lot of great whiskeys that are in that range, and one of the more requested bottles are bottles that people mentioned that they hoped were in that series was the Loch Lomond 18. And at that time, this was somewhat farther down on my list in terms of what I was looking forward to trying, but that has since changed. And I've talked about that a few other times on this channel when it comes to Loch Lomond. And you can check out the 12-year review that I did not too long ago. I think it was a month or two ago now, where I probably talk about that a little bit more in depth. And I even mentioned it a bit in my Whiskey of the Year video, as I did have a Loch Lomond single cask that I at least brought out and gave a shout out for just being all around excellent. Now, the Loch Lomond lineup has been a little bit challenging to get here in the US. However, I do see the 18, at least in the old labeling. The whole line has since gone through a bit of a refresh. The 12-year-old, which I had to order from the UK, that had like the new style of labeling on it. But I do still see these 18-year-old Loch Lomond's floating around, and they tend to be about $90 to $100 or so. However, I got this one on sale, and I only paid $70 plus tax for this. That was at Binny's in Chicago. A frequent mention on this channel as K&L, Binny's, and then some shop overseas tend to be where I get most of my scotch from these days, because there's not a lot of local options for me. But yeah, 46% ABV. This one, they do say does have some peat in it. Our 18-year-old has been maturing in the finest oak cask chosen by Tommy Wallace, our master cooper at the time. Time and nature have been allowed to bring out the sweeter character of the wood, which is very true. We'll get into that. Mellow notes of peat and smoke, delivering a well-balanced finish. Loch Lomond 18 is non-chill filtered to keep things just as nature intended. A Google search says that this is natural color. However, it doesn't say on the bottle. There is always some suspicion that at least maybe in some of the Loch Lomond offerings that there is a touch of coloring in them. The color is fair for an 18-year-old whiskey. It is a blend of casks. I believe their website went into a little more detail. It's a blend of the three cask types that they use. I don't know if it actually stated what those casks were, however. Aged in 3 types of American oak casks. That, I believe, is it. Yeah, so 3 types of cask, probably bourbon, sherry, and maybe refill. Those are probably the 3 standard casks that you would expect. And it's probably made from a blend of the different styles, like they have, like Inchmurrin, Inchmoan, Inchfad, that sort of thing. I'm trying to remember all the different sort of versions that Loch Lomond does create, and you can get they do bottle those kind of individually, but this is similar to the 12-year. going to be kind of the original 12 year, or I forget the exact wording for it, but they're standard 12, and but you can get some of the individual kind of recipes or styles that will the bottle or the box will actually have the name printed on there. There's not too much else for me to say about Loch Lomond. I've talked about them a little bit. Let's get into the nosing and tasting notes, give this thing a score. And I mean, if you're paying $70 for it, it's going to be a good value. I'll let you know that up front. But here we go. On the nose. So I think the first thing I've noticed with this so far is how much wood influence is on this. This is one of the more kind of wood forward, especially on the nose, but wood forward scotches I think I've had lately. It's not like over oaked in that sense. It's not bitter or even tannic on the palate, but just has like a really nice oak smell, and it does show up on the palate as well. It's like a sweet, toasty kind of oak. It's not the bitter, tannic, dry style that you kind of fear if something gets stays in the cask a little bit too long. So I'm looking for that kind of Loch Lomond fruitiness that I've come to know in my early adventures with the distillery. And at least early on in the bottle, it does show up, but it's kind of like in little bursts. Like I can catch a whiff of it, and then the next time I'll go in looking for it and I can't find it. And then, you know, maybe it's the angle I'm holding the glass. Maybe it's still just opening up a little bit in the bottle, but you can find it on the nose, and it does show up on the palate. So let's see if I can find any of the peat. On the nose, it's extremely subtle. You can argue there's a little kind of whiff of campfire smoke or something like that, but that's only really if I'm looking for it. You might be a little bit more sensitive to it, but again, this is one that if you're averse to peat, I probably wouldn't be afraid of trying. If you're really concerned, yeah, you'll just have to try to find a dram in a bar, but it's probably worth at least trying. Yeah, there's a little whiff of the fruit, and the fruit is that nice, bright, fruity, tropical white fruit, you know, kind of apples and pineapple sort of thing. It's really good. This has been an interesting nose. It's not like holy cow, but I think just like the wood part of it has just been a really nice change of pace. Yeah, I've enjoyed the nose. Not something that I think I would lose myself in or anything like that, but it is nice to as terms of like a change of pace for me, at least from what I've been drinking recently. So I would give the nose a solid 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, something like that, but I don't normally score those things separately. Let's try it on the palate and see how it's tasting today. Cheers. On the front of the palate, that's really where the wood comes out, which is different. It's interesting. I usually expect that on like the back half of the experience, but it really kind of comes out on the front, and it is kind of sweet and toasty. That's kind of accompanies some vanilla, some darker sweetness, maybe a little bit of caramelish to toffee, butterscotch, somewhere in there. But it's mostly a nice oak, and then when you swallow, then you get that Loch Lomond fruitiness, the white fruit, orchard fruit, with maybe just like a touch of kind of tropical spray of pineapple sort of thing. And then kind of the woodiness kind of comes back in, that really nice oak. It darkens up a little bit. You do get a little more leathery. I think at least on the more, I think it was the web page, which is going to be at least maybe a couple years old or after the rebranding. So I don't know if it's the exact same blend or not, but I assume it probably is. I think they mentioned tobacco on there. And yeah, I can definitely get a little bit of cigar tobacco. I think they mentioned like cigar box on the nose, like Spanish cedar, I'm assuming they mean. I didn't pick up any of that. To me, it's more of just like a dried oak tree. It's, you know, dried or maybe something that has been toasted. Don't get any Spanish cedar if that's what they're referring to. Anyways, do get a little bit of tobacco on the kind of the back end. That's probably coming from that kind of small dose of peat that is in this. Got a nice long finish, had a nice texture overall. Let's take another sip and see if I can pick out anything else. Here we go. A little less oaky up front this time. It's so good. It's such a satisfying hit of fruit, and then it goes so gently back into that kind of oakiness. And oak is fruity as well, right? That's where some of those like cherry and apple notes going to come out in like bourbon, things like that. So it is like a pretty smooth transition. It's so satisfying. There is maybe a slight effervescence here, and that is something that can kind of get associated with Loch Lomond. Maybe a little bit. A little bit of chocolate now coming out. Even some nuttiness. Maybe I'm assuming there probably are some sherry casks in here. So on the very back finish, it's a little bit of chocolate covered nuts. And that peat. The peat really kind of does stick with it, just providing that little lift of richness. You can even argue there's a little bit of salt in here as well. One more. Yeah, this one's been getting better with every pour I've had of it so far. I've been enjoying it more and more, and it's a very satisfying experience. It's very flavorful up front. From the second it hits your tongue, like I said, you're kind of getting some kind of classic oak notes that maybe you would find in bourbon. It doesn't taste like bourbon, but you're getting some of those kind of oaky vanillas and a little bit of darker sugars. Touch of apple or that apple cherry sort of vibe to it, but in Scotch form. And then when you swallow, it just hits. Yeah, it's just such a satisfying thing. This is such a transition from those early experiences I had with Loch Lomond. I'm sure those tasted like this too, but I wasn't tuned in to the subtleties at that point. I'm assuming. I'm assuming. But I'm glad I came back around, as I've mentioned. This is fantastic. If this was $70, if I could buy this on the shelf, that's for $70. I know we're not really into the value portion of things yet, but you really have to almost start to ask yourself why you would drink anything else. But I'm guessing this isn't going to be even that $90 or $100. If it does make it back over here to the States, which I'm hoping it does, I'm assuming at some point it will. I'm going to guess it will probably fall in line more with the rest of the 18-year-old range, and that kind of somewhere between $120 to $150 is where I think a lot of them have fallen now. I don't think it'll be a luxury brand. I think it'll probably sit in there. If we can get it for maybe like $115 or $110 even, I mean, it's a buy all day long. But anyways, in terms of a score, this is a banger. It really is. It's just different enough. I think there are quite a few whiskeys out there that I know I can kind of get that like fruity hit, although this one is very, very satisfying. But I do really like kind of the oak, just the casks that are involved in this. You can tell they use some pretty solid casks here to provide a pretty good shot of flavor. For me, at least, it's not over oaky. I don't know, maybe if somebody else is a little more sensitive, but again, after drinking some older bourbons and stuff like that, I like Elijah Craig 18, which bourbon drinkers complain is too oaky, and I don't have any problem with it. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's an 8 out of 10, no problem. And really, for an 18-year-old Scotch, I mean, I think that's where you're kind of hoping it is. Had a lot of those 10 and 12-year-olds I've scored around the seven mark, with a few lower, maybe one or two higher. So you're kind of hoping to get some elevation with the extra age and obviously cost. So I think this one does it. This is a slightly more satisfying version of the 12-year-old, I would say. Maybe a little bit more peat influence, which really helps lift things up. And yeah, just a real masterful work, at least for my palate, with the use of good quality casks, it appears. Value, yeah, I think if this is this is under, if you can get this under 120, it's a great value. If it creeps up higher, you know, it's just kind of gonna end up in the mix with a lot of other bottles. But if you can find a bottle of this, like I know there are a few bottles floating around here locally in some, you know, maybe some stores that aren't traditionally viewed as being Scotch stores. In San Diego, as I mentioned before, there's very few places that you can go and get consistent selection in terms of Scotch whiskey, which is why I have to like have mine pretty much shipped from a bunch of places or pick it up while I'm visiting family. But there are some bottles of this lying around here, and I know they're kind of in that $90 to $100 range. If you can find a bottle of this and it's 90 to $100 or less than that, I would absolutely probably pick one up, provided this sounds like something that you might enjoy. But I think that's going to do it all for me. This should go live right before Christmas, so I hope you've been enjoying your holidays, however you celebrate and all that stuff. And stay safe, and enjoy some good whiskey. I hope this is kind of the whiskey season. I'm sure many of us are going to be having some of the best whiskeys we drink all year. Right now, all those special bottles that people have been saving for the holidays and everything. Definitely let me know what that bottle is. If you have a bottle that you've been saving for Christmas or the holidays, whether it's open or you're about to open it, let me know in the comments. I'm always interested to see what people have been kind of squirreling away for those special occasions. And this is probably the time of year where a lot of those things are going to get cracked open. So it's always fun to hear people talk about what bottles they've saved, and then ultimately it's less common to hear about what they actually thought. Was it worth saving? That's probably the more interesting question. But yeah, happy holidays to everyone. Happy New Year. There is one more other video coming out before New Year's, which I've already recorded actually. But so that one will be coming out after this one. But yeah, stick around for the new year. We've got some interesting bottles coming up. Some of those bottles I mentioned in the Whiskey of the Year video. Some of the new release stuff that I'm really excited to dig into and get to know. It's going to be a good start to 2025. I am looking forward to it. But until next time, cheers. Happy holidays.